Imagine you're an American sailor on a U.S. Navy destroyer in the North Atlantic, low on fuel after a long deployment. You radio for permission to dock at a NATO ally's port in Germany, your home away from home for decades. But the response crackles back: permission denied. No explanation, just silence from the other end. Or picture this: you're a wounded U.S. Marine medevaced from a hot zone in the Middle East, headed to the world-class Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany for life-saving surgery. But as the plane approaches, European air traffic control turns you away. No entry. Find another hospital. These aren't scenes from a Tom Clancy thriller. They could become reality if President Trump follows through his threats to take over Greenland. What happens next? Could Europe really cripple the U.S. military without firing a single shot? How would they do it, and what would it mean for America's global power? All reveal the secret weapon Europe is quietly preparing, backed by expert analysis from think tanks like Chatham House and the chilling precedents from today's headlines that make this all too possible. Stick around, because if Trump moves on Greenland, the Western alliance as we know it could shatter, and I'll show you exactly how Europe plans to hit back where it hurts most. Now, let's dive deep into this escalating crisis. First, we have to understand why Greenland is even on Trump's radar in 2026. According to a fresh interview today with The Atlantic, President Trump reiterated his long-standing interest, saying, "We need Greenland for national security, it's vital." But today's developments amp up the urgency. Just hours ago, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller appeared on CNN, dismissing Danish sovereignty concerns and emphasizing, in a world governed by strength and power, Greenland must be secured for America's defense. This echoes the Soon map posted yesterday by Katie Miller on X, a post now garnered over 1 million views and sparked global outrage. The strategic stakes are massive. Greenland hosts the U.S.'s Thule Air Base, crucial for missile warning and space surveillance. But Trump wants more: full control to build what experts are calling a Golden Dome missile defense system. As per a new Chatham House report released this morning, melting Arctic ice is opening new shipping lanes, and Greenland's vast rare earth minerals, essential for everything from F-35 jets to iPhones, could reduce U.S. dependence on China. A Reuters article from January 8th quotes a senior Pentagon official anonymously: "Without sovereign control, we risk Russian or Chinese encroachment in the Arctic." This ties into Trump's broader Monroe Doctrine, an evolution of the Monroe Doctrine, aiming to dominate resources in the Western Hemisphere and beyond. But Europe isn't backing down. Today's joint statement from European leaders, signed by France's Emmanuel Macron, Germany's Friedrich Merz, UK's Keir Starmer, Poland's Donald Tusk, Italy, Spain, and Denmark, reaffirms Greenland's future is for Greenland and Denmark alone. Any unilateral action threatens the post-WW2 order. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, in a January 8th interview with BBC, warned bluntly, "If the US attacks a NATO ally, everything stops, including our alliance." This isn't empty rhetoric, it's grounded in NATO's Article 5, where an attack on one is an attack on all. If Trump uses force or coercion on Greenland, part of Denmark, that could trigger the clause against the US itself, leading to NATO's functional collapse. So what can Europe actually do if Trump pushes forward? Let's break it down, step by step, based on today's expert analyses from sources like the Financial Times and Politico Europe. First, diplomatic isolation. Europe could rally the UN Security Council for a resolution condemning U.S. actions, though U.S. veto power limits that. More effectively, as per a fresh EU Parliament briefing this afternoon, they could impose targeted sanctions on U.S. officials involved, like travel bans or asset freezes, similar to those against Russian oligarchs. Canada, an Arctic nation, has already backed Denmark today, with Prime Minister Carney stating in Paris, "Arctic sovereignty is non-negotiable." This could extend to Quad or AUKUS partners pressuring the U.S. from outside. But the real power lies in Europe's secret weapon, as outlined in Chatham House's January 8th update: logistical stranglehold over U.S. military infrastructure. Europe hosts key U.S. bases like Ramstein in Germany, command hub for Middle East ops, and Sigonella in Italy. If NATO fractures, Europe could enact a refueling ban, denying U.S. ships and planes access to ports in Spain, Italy, or Gibraltar. Imagine a carrier strike group en route to the Persian Gulf forced to reroute thousands of miles because allies say no. A Guardian op-ed today estimates this could cut U.S. operational range by 30 to 40% in critical theaters. Even more shocking, a medical blockade. For years, U.S. troops from Iraq or Afghanistan have been treated at Landstuhl in Germany. Europe's refusal to accept them, as hinted in Frederiksen's interview, could cripple U.S. sustainment in high-risk ops. Add base closures or exorbitant hosting fees, Chatham House notes Germany alone could demand billions, making Ramstein unviable. Today's Wall Street Journal reports European officials discussing unthinkable measures in private Brussels meetings, including expelling U.S. personnel from EU soil. Economically, Europe holds cards too. Greenland's rare earths are vital, but a Bloomberg analysis this morning suggests Europe could diversify supply chains faster, partnering with Australia or Africa to undercut U.S. gains. They could also hit U.S. exports, tariffs on American goods if Trump retaliates. Tusk emphasized today, no NATO member threatens another without consequences. Now, the U.S. counterarguments. Trump allies argue Europe is bluffing. Miller said on Fox News this morning, nobody fights the U.S. militarily over an island. U.S. logic. Denmark, with 6 million people, can't defend Greenland against Russia or China, and America needs it for ballistic missile defense. A Pentagon brief leaked today via AP claims Russian ships are swarming Greenland waters. But experts like those at the Atlantic Council warn in their January 8th podcast, Europe's leverage is real because the U.S. relies on transatlantic unity for global projection. If Europe pulls the plug, U.S. isolationism could backfire, forcing retreat to the Americas under the Monroe Doctrine. What about Canada? Carney's support today signals Arctic nations uniting. Canada could question U.S. Northwest Passage claims next. Finally, Greenlanders themselves. Prime Minister Mutabara Kielsen said in a nuke presser today afternoon, "Our land is not for sale. U.S. approach disrespectful." Denmark pledged $6.58 billion for Arctic defense today to appease U.S. concerns, but if Trump ignores it, the fallout could be seismic. In conclusion, if Trump takes Greenland, Europe can't win militarily, but they can make it painfully costly through diplomacy, logistics, and economics. The big question for Americans, is Greenland worth losing NATO and our global edge? We'll watch as this unfolds. Subscribe for updates. Thanks for watching.